Bring in show music, please.
Today, former President Donald Trump guilty on all 34 counts. The debate that's happening all over the country.
You can't not believe in the system. Otherwise, you can't really believe in this country.
If you're going to convict a president and take a former president, it should be a significant.
I understand your perspective.
It should be if you do understand it, then don't dismiss it, because it's not just me.
I'm not dismissing your perspective.
It's half the country.
And what this verdict means for fundraising. CNBC's Brian Schwartz.
Within hours, he starts raising money at a clip. I mean, it got to a point where his fundraising website crashed.
How Silicon Valley could take the news after tech's partial shift to the right with veteran tech investor and Democrat Alan Patricof.
People are so focused on their pocketbook and their self-interest and not really thinking about, democracy, the total country.
And how crypto comes into it all. Former New York Stock Exchange President Tom Farley is at his consensus conference in Austin with thousands of the Web3 community.
I was with RFK Jr. yesterday when that news came out, and it was surreal. I mean, it was standing room only to hear what he had to say.
I'm CNBC producer Zach Vallese. It's Friday, May 31st. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Count 31, guilty. Count 32, guilty. Count 33, guilty. Count 34, guilty. That is 34 felony counts here.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man. And it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration.
On Thursday evening, after a 6-week trial in New York and 9.5 hours of jury deliberations, former President Trump guilty on all 34 counts in his criminal hush money trial. Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin invited another CNBC journalist to the set this morning to discuss the verdict.
Now to the fallout from former President Trump's conviction in the hush money trial. CNBC political finance reporter Brian Schwartz reports that Trump is unlikely to lose the support of Republican mega donors as a result of the verdict. I was picking Brian's brain already. Brian joins us now to see if you had any. You can drive a truck through the numbers you gave me about last night. The website did go. I guess it went down. The Trump fundraising website. But it could be 20 million. Could be 50.
Yeah,
be 50 million.
I'll say this. What a night for Donald Trump for a variety of reasons. We had the guilty verdict. And then, within hours, he starts raising money at a clip. I mean, it got to a point where his fundraising website crashed. The website the Republicans use called Win Red, right? So it crashed because of the amount of money, that's what the Trump people say, was going to him post the guilty verdict. And, what I'm hearing is that their estimates running around Trump world of exactly how much they raised. People are saying anywhere from 10 to 20 to even maybe $50 million post the verdict. And that would be an extraordinary amount of money if, in fact, that's what they end up announcing that they raise. And I think it's just a tell from the story that we ran yesterday of exactly what's going on here with the Republican mega donor, Republican-leaning business leader, and where they're at coming into this morning and their views on this verdict. And they're not necessarily criticizing Trump for the verdict. They're doubling and tripling down in some cases.
And you think that's from the mega donors, though?
It's from the mega donors. It's also from small dollar.
The folks that were on the website yesterday were not the mega donors.
Well, that's not exactly right either. What I spoke to people. So I spoke to different consultants who work with people who are very wealthy in and around this town and across the country. And there was somebody who was telling me that you can go online and you can give to these various Trump-related committees. And we'll get into that another day. It's 6 figures. And this person was telling me he hadn't received this amount of calls and outreach to work with these donors to get their money onto the website and process that money toward Donald Trump. And that's really remarkable. I mean, this is somebody who's been working this circuit, for instance, for years.
You saw Ackman, you saw Elon Musk, you saw David Sachs, you saw all those.
Actually may come out and endorse him.
Well, so what we're hearing, again, this is all, again, ironically, we ran that story yesterday. We've been hearing over the last few days into the buildup of this guilty verdict that Bill Ackman was likely to support Donald Trump. And leaning in toward him, and that he hadn't made a final decision yet. But we have seen. I think he was speaking to you at Squawk. We said months ago him taking aim at Biden.
Brian, do you know the totals? Because there was a big gap between what Trump had in the bank and what Biden had in the bank.
Yeah. So when we ended April, when we wrapped up April, Trump and the RNC announced that they had raised north of $70 million in that month alone. Biden and the DNC had announced, combined with their political operation, that they raised a little bit over $50 million. Okay. So up until this point, Trump has started to slowly surge back into the fundraising game against Biden. And there's for a variety of reasons why donors are starting to give more and more. Wealthier donors, small dollar donors.
Well, and is your sense that the base of donors is spreading, so there's more donors, or is it the same group of people who are doubling down?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think there are people who are slowly coming off the sidelines who were necessarily not sold on Trump during the Republican primary process or post-January 6, 2021. We're kind of back to that again, right? Some of these very same people who are going around saying, I can't believe what happened on January 6th, I'm blaming Trump publicly or privately, are now coming back. And then there are people who have always been in this camp who are doubling down, to your point, who are giving more and more and more, in part in reaction to this verdict that took place yesterday.
Betting sites initially flip completely.
Right.
Not that it matters.
They're basically at the same place.
Now they're back to the same place. Yeah. But they had flipped and Biden was up by 4 or 5. But, it's thin trading. It doesn't necessarily. But just as a measure to gauge the sentiment.
The polls are all over the place, too.
Right.
Like the polls, even the snap polls that were taken last night on some of these things.
That's right.
To say who it's going to change.
Well, that's right. It's really unclear how this verdict is going to change anybody's vote, if anyone at all. I mean, this is the question mark now for Joe Biden, the Democrats. I mean, how far do they go with using this result in court against Donald Trump? Is that really a tactic they want to use? Could it backfire them? Because I don't know how many Americans are really sitting back and caring about what took place there. I mean, I'm sure there are people. I'm just saying in terms of the polls and the people in the key states of Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin.
Well, that's the question. Is the independent voter or the sort of on the fence voter?
Right.
Do they want to vote for somebody who has been convicted?
Yeah, that's the question now.
That's the question. And I imagine there's some people who will say, I can't vote for somebody who's convicted. And I imagine there's maybe some others who may not like the case if they focused on the case.
That's right.
And this is always the big thing that we were talking about yesterday. I don't think most people even understand what the case is.
Yeah.
Because most people have not been even following the case.
It's bad if they don't. Convicted of what? That's the thing. It's convicted of falsifying.
You know what? Let's not have a debate about whether the legal system in America is.
That's all the debate is about. You've seen what the others say. Are you proud of the case at this point? Do you think it's a good case? Do you think there's any issues with this case?
I do not think that we should look. I've covered a number of cases in court for years. Some people who have been convicted who shouldn't have been convicted, and others who have. I believe in the system. You can't not believe in the system. Otherwise, you can't really believe in this country.
Okay, Andrew.
I'm just saying you can't say Andrew, that the Supreme Court of the United States, which I know you love, given everybody who's on it.
Andrew, it was a Democrat that was elected. He was elected.
I understand your perception.
If you're going to convict a president and take a former president, it should be a significant.
I understand your perspective.
It should be a significant. If you do understand it, then don't dismiss it, because it's not just me.
Dismissing your perspective.
It's half the country.
First of all, we don't know if it's half the country. You think he's going to win the popular vote?
I don't know.
Call me. But when you think about what's happened here, one of the things that this case has demonstrated, irrespective of anything, is you have a president, who's hanging out with who's doing much more with a porn star than hanging out. That we know. The proof, we saw it.
That's
right.
But everybody knows that, and we knew that before he was elected.
We sort of knew it. Everybody didn't know it 100%. And now you know it 100%.
So talk
then
about
you know
JFK
he's paying people,
or talk
and then
about
you know
Bill
he's paying
Clinton.
people off. He's lying about it. He's asking other people to lie about it. All of this is now empirical, factual information that's in the record. That's what we know.
Man, you're really not. You read the Journal? Do you listen to Elon Musk? Did you look at what David Sachs?
If you watch Fox and David Sachs, I understand that there's other perspective.
This is what we've come to in this country now, where your political opponent is set up in a 85% Trump lost in Manhattan.
Isn't this where we've come to the country where we have people? Where we have people
see
in
anyone
these
else.
roles?
You don't see anyone else saying this, that this is a banana republic, and they can't beat Trump. Fair and square, so they get a Democrat.
Fair and square. The next case is about whether he was trying to rig the last election in Georgia. This man is a professional rigger of the election.
You feel good about the verdict and the way the justice system was used?
I don't know. I wasn't in the court.
As a man,
I wasn't in the court.
Don't punt like that. As a man of principle, and you always tell me you are.
I try to be.
You feel good about.
I don't know. But I'm not sitting here.
You have a better idea than I don't know. Do you think this is the way the court system should be used?
I believe it appears that he did something illegal, and it appears he was convicted of doing something illegal, and the facts actually seem to bear that out relatively simply, actually. There wasn't even much of a debate about the facts. Now, you're asking a different question.
No, I'm not asking.
Should somebody who was the former president be prosecuted for such a thing?
It was look, you know it's a misdemeanor. You know that the statute of limitations had run out unless you gin it up, you jury rig some crazy felony. And
I have watched a number of cases where prosecutors have done lots of things.
That doesn't make it right when it's a former president. This should have been. This should have been the first time in history a president's convicted of something should have been something very serious. Whether it's
that opportunity is going to happen soon.
It's not going to happen before.
It may not happen, right? And then is that good for? Is that system good for America? Is that good system good for America?
Part?
So
I don't know. These are off in the future. I have no idea.
There are serious allegations against this man. If you don't think these are serious, there are other serious allegations.
Once again, innocent until proven guilty.
The system is so
screwed up. Is he already guilty?
So
he's already guilty of those.
The system's so screwed up that this guy is going to go off and become the president of the United States, and then he's going to save himself all over again? Is that justice? That's not justice either, my friend.
So he's guilty of these other things. He's not innocent.
Was he not guilty of so he wasn't guilty of what happened yesterday, but he isn't guilty of. I mean, what are you talking about?
I have no idea whether he's guilty of these other things.
We'll find out.
Well, I know that he's innocent. I know that he's innocent now. Until he's proven guilty, I know he's innocent.
But before you said the hush money, you knew with the hush money that he was already guilty. You said you already knew. You said everybody knew. He was guilty before, now he's not guilty.
You're so all over. These aren't points.
That's what I'm saying. Everybody's all over the place. That's the whole point of this.
Is this going to be good or bad for the election?
I have no idea.
I think
I'm watching what Brian is saying.
It was a bad day. Anybody gloating and taking anyone spiking the football.
I'm saying anybody who's sitting around saying that this is fine and this is normal.
I'm not saying it's fine. I'm not saying it's fine.
You sat here defending the man.
All right, watch what happens.
We'll see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. You could just look at me like that, but I don't know what's going to happen.
As a man, I really was expecting that you would have said this was not a good way to do things, because many people on that side of the issue is looking at what happened and shaking their heads about what this means for this country and the justice system in this country.
You know, if you watch enough of a certain network, that perspective is told over and over and over and over and over again.
And which network are you watching? The one where they were actually screaming in joy?
No, I'm just saying that there's lots of perspectives on it. You have a perspective.
You know what he was guilty of? He's guilty of being. They convicted him of being Donald Trump. And if you think that's good enough to let Joe Biden get rid of his main political opponent, and that's the way we do elections here. It's no better than a
Joe Biden being accused of rigging, of genuinely rigging election. I have not heard that he was with Stormy Daniels. I have not heard that he's lied about it. I've not heard he's tried to kill articles about it. I've not heard that he's paying people off. I haven't heard about those things.
Not Joe Biden, then Democrats writ large. This is not the way you want. It's not going to go well. It's not going to look good, and it's no way to run a justice system.
When we come back, a lot more. We should thank Brian for for sitting.
Always a pleasure. It's to be here.
Tease will be next.
Next on Squawk Pod, veteran tech investor and longtime Democrat donor Alan Patricof weighs in.
My area is focused right now on older people, and I'm concerned with, what's going to happen to them, Social Security, Medicare, and issues like that. And I think that under a Biden administration, there's going to be much more concern about those issues.
Plus, how the famed early investor in Apple and AOL is viewing AI.
People want to get on the bandwagon, and they're afraid of missing out. FOMO is, as you know, which is fear of missing out, is prevalent today in the AI area.
We'll be right back. This is Squawk Pod. Here's Becky.
Silicon Valley is starting to align on different sides of the political aisle as the election draws closer. Our next guest is a longtime tech investor who donated to President Biden's campaign in 2020. Joining us right now is Alan Patricof. He's a veteran venture capitalist and co-founder and chairman of Primetime Partners. Alan, this is kind of the rest of America sitting up and starting to take sides on this, too. There have been some who have posited that Silicon Valley is not nearly as democratic as it was, let's say, 4 years ago, 8 years ago. Is that the sense you get?
Well, I read what you read, and frankly, it discourages me. It makes me feel that people are so focused on their pocketbook and their self-interest and not really thinking about, the democracy, the total country, and it's totally related to self-interest. They're worried about the fact that the Trump tax cuts will not be renewed. They're worried about competition and Lena Khan and Jonathan Cantor being tough on antitrust. And those are issues that are really in the best interest of the company. We haven't had an antitrust law since, Clayton Act and the Sherman Act and maybe, Robinson-Patman Act, but we haven't had new antitrust legislation, and we now have people looking at whether competition, we should stimulate competition. So there are issues that I think are totally related to self-interest that are affecting Silicon Valley.
For a long time, and you got all kinds of Republican friends, and I know that you're not saying that every one of them is just thinking about self-interest. It is reasonable that certain people can think that Reagan-type policies lift the entire ship, and that low taxes, less regulation brings more prosperity. And it's not just that they think that, in my view, Democratic policies end up hurting the people they're designed to help. And Democrats never want to talk about that and connect the dots. And I think that the people that you're trying to help, they get hit with inflation, with all this spending. So I just think that's really a cynical view of all these people that all they're thinking about is their after-tax what they get to put in their pocket.
I don't want to seem a total altruist, but I'm looking out the window here and I see a huge American flag on one of the windows across the street. Huge. I don't know. I honestly am concerned about the country. Because I'm concerned about what Donald Trump stands for. I think it stands for issues that concern me and concern my children and grandchildren, and I worry about it. And I worry about that decision that took place yesterday. 12 people who I don't know voted on a 100% consistent basis to bring action against the ex-president of the United States. That's pretty significant.
There's plenty of Americans that look at what's happening on the southern border and think that America is going down the tubes, and look at the crime issue, and look at what's happening on myriad issues with inflation and debt and everything else, Alan. So that doesn't give you a monopoly on owning the flag, on what we think about the flag.
We need several million more workers in this country to help solve our deficit.
You don't need to do that through illegal immigration.
Well, Joe Biden, listen, I'm not a proponent specifically of Joe Biden. I'm just looking at the issues and looking at the different people. And, my area is focused right now on older people, and I'm concerned with, what's going to happen to them, Social Security, Medicare, and issues like that. And I think that under a Biden administration, there's going to be much more concern about those issues than there are under Trump. I mean, we're not here to discuss specific politics, but I think that the Biden has got the interest in the general population more so than Trump does, and that's what concerns me.
Alan, why don't we talk a little bit about AI? Because we had a venture capitalist who was here earlier this week who suggested that all of these AI plays are overvalued. He hasn't invested in any of them directly yet, and that he thinks that this is going to be very cyclical, like you saw maybe back with the dot-com era, and like you've seen in other innovations in the past.
I don't know who you had on, but I agree with them 100%. I'd say 110%. I mean, we have an enormous flood of money going into the AI area. I mean, I saw something like $250 million just in the last year, and I think it's happened before. And every time we've seen it happen, whether it's thinking most recently crypto, we have excesses, and at the end, some people are going to get hurt. I'm sure some people are going to make a lot of money out of it. But when you see companies, coming out of the gate and raising money at $100 billion valuation, or as we saw just a few days ago, Elon Musk raising $6 billion at a $18 billion valuation, people want to get on the bandwagon, and they're afraid of missing out. I mean, this is FOMO is as you know, which is fear of missing out, is prevalent today in the AI area. Every company, young company, has decided that if they add AI to their name, they have a better chance of raising money. I'm interested in AI from the standpoint of the implications it has for the companies that we've invested in, and I think it's absolutely going to have an enormous impact on productivity in so many different areas, whether it's education or whether it's technology or whether it's biotech. But in our area, we're seeing it in companies that are servicing. We have two companies, for example, a company called Kintsugi on the West Coast and Isaac on the East Coast, and they're using AI in their technology to try to predict people, in one case, depression through remote telecom, and the other one to discern possible decline in dementia and be predictive. And I think that that's a great use of AI. And I think that we can see lots of other. We have another one called Cardo, which does that in terms of heart disease and how to prevent or how to slow it down. Those applications are all over the place, and I think that's going to be the major beneficiary of AI.
The venture capitalist we had on earlier this week was Mitchell Green from Lead Edge. His point was you will see NVIDIA making a lot of money, and potentially some of the big cloud companies that are using their cloud computing to help with this. Do you have any direct AI investments?
No, we don't make any. We're all focused on, Primetime Partners is focused on investing in products, services, and technologies that are going to help older people live longer and live healthier. And that's a very worthy objective. And AI is certainly going to be a tool that we're going to use. But I think lots of industries are going to use it. And, but investing directly in a platform would involve funds that are probably 10 times the size of the funds we have. But our companies will benefit from it.
How quickly? Is this a now, or is this a down the road?
Right. As we're sitting here, I mean, every company is looking at how they can introduce more machine learning, more AI tech tools in order to accelerate what they're doing and shorten time cycles and reduce people. I was talking to one of our companies recently, a company called Qualcomm, which does analysis of coding for senior living providers and how to reduce their receivables from 60 days down to 20 days by faster processing and reconciling the coding so that they don't get stock could have a 60-day receivable. They could have a 20-day receivable. That's a direct application. And the process,
and it pays
obviously,
off right now.
they're going to probably, customers will reduce their number of employees that have been sitting and doing this manually. So, it has enormous implications.
Alan, I want to thank you for coming in today. Alan Patricoff.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Up next on Squawk Pod, we're heading down to Austin, Texas, where the crypto conference consensus is underway. Former New York Stock Exchange president and now CEO of crypto exchange Bullish, Tom Farley, joins us on the politics and on the blockchain.
You basically have both parties realizing you have a large electorate, mostly male, many non-white, disproportionately non-white, who are interested in digital assets, interested in seeing develop. And so both parties are saying, what can we do to be helpful? It certainly all started with May 11th at Mar-a-Lago.
You're listening to Squawk Pod from CNBC with Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Our next guest joins us from CoinDesk Consensus in Austin, a crypto, blockchain, and Web3 conference where guests include Cathie Wood and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. They're due to speak later today. Here is Tom Farley, the CEO of Bullish, the company that owns CoinDesk. Tom is also former president, of course, of the New York Stock Exchange, a longtime guest on Squawk, occasionally guest host as well. Tom, it's nice to see you, sir.
Nice to see you. I've missed you all. I woke up a little bit late this morning. I flipped on CNBC and you and Joe were fighting. I knew I was in the right place. It's a hot set up there.
So welcome to the show. Help us understand what kind of fighting or not is happening down in Austin and what the conversation is. I would have thought it would be crypto, but I imagine this morning it might be crypto with a twist of guilty.
There's so much going on. So I'm down here at the Consensus Conference. There's 20,000 people. And, we were on our way to kind of a normal conference. And the month of May has just been nuts. A month of a decade of policy in the digital asset space has transpired in the month of May. And then I was with RFK Jr. yesterday when that news came out. And it was surreal. I mean, it was standing room only to hear what he had to say. I was backstage with him. You could tell he wasn't really all that excited to talk about it. You know, his comments, you've seen a summary of his comments, but his kind of view was, who cares? This isn't an important issue for the American public, and feels like just a continuation of the culture war. Let's move past it. But yeah, it was a nutty day yesterday.
Tom, how much do you think that crypto, oddly enough, feels like it has become politicized? The guest you just mentioned has come out in favor of crypto, has said, if you vote for me, I'm going to be a proponent of crypto. You recently started to hear a similar kind of argument from former President Trump. I don't know where the Democrats, I don't think the Democrats have been as vociferous about it, but then you have a whole bunch of, frankly, Democrats in crypto who are some of the most prominent people in the business. So it's very hard to try to understand how you think politics and crypto relate. Obviously, regulation is in the middle of that.
I could not have predicted this, Andrew, but I'm not sure there's a more politicized issue right now in America than digital assets. Like, let's go back through the month of May. May 8th, the administration comes out and says, we're going to veto a relatively benign bipartisan bill working its way through Congress. President Trump sees that on May 11th and says, there's a place for crypto in my administration. The 90 million Americans that own crypto look at that and say, well, that seems reasonable. The administration, the Democratic Party realizes, oh, geez, maybe we're on the wrong side of politics. They then say, we won't veto an additional bill that's working its way through the House and ultimately passes the House. President Trump then doubles down, says, not only is there a home for crypto, I want to support it. I want it to develop here in America because I want to support interesting new technologies in this country. Then the administration looks at it and says, well, we have to do something. The Ethereum ETF gets approved also in May. And if you're keeping score at home, and I know this is a dizzying amount of developments, ETH, many years ago, the SEC came out and said, not a security. For the last couple years, the SEC has been treating it as a security. Last week, by approving this ETH ETF, definitively is saying once and for all, not a security. So you basically have both parties realizing you have a large electorate, mostly male, many non-white, disproportionately non-white, who are interested in digital assets, interested in seeing it develop. And so both parties are saying, what can we do to be helpful? It certainly all started with May 11th at Mar-a-Lago, President Trump saying, hey, there's a place here in my administration.
Hey, Tom, I have a different question, because I've heard the figure that you mentioned bandied about a lot, and it's never made sense to me. Maybe you can make more sense of it. Maybe you know the provenance of it. This figure that 90 million Americans own crypto. If you think about it, there are only about 200 million Americans over the age, I believe, of 18 years old in this country, which would mean that physically half of them, including people who are much, much older, and if you think about the curve in terms of retirees, that they all own crypto. I ask taxi drivers quite regularly and just people on the street whether they own crypto, and I will tell you it is not typically that half of them say that they own crypto at all. So I've never understood where that figure comes from.
Well, first of all, the estimates are all over the map. I've seen 70, I've seen 85, I've seen 93. People will put their names to it. They have entire buildups of exactly what it is. Andrew, if it's wrong by 5x, shouldn't we support a great new technology in this country, especially because it's a very motivated group of people who care deeply about digital assets. But just punch into your Google machine right there, Andrew, you'll see a number of studies that come up that broadly put the number between 70 and 95 million in terms of individuals.
I've seen the studies. That's what by the way, I
haven't done the study. If you're asking me to measure the veracity of the study, I kind of I look at them all and I weigh the ones that have a high number, a low number, and I gave you an estimate here on air without having a big note set at the bottom of my comment.
Right. What is your sense? We do debate ETH and whether we think that is going to be an approved security effectively at some point soon in terms of an ETF or the like. How do you handicap that situation? Obviously, the last time we went down this road, it required a lawsuit for the SEC effectively to capitulate. You think that the SEC is going to capitulate on its own this time?
Yes.
It's a one-word answer. Okay, why?
It's just, in my mind, there's no ambiguity. It's going to be approved. It's going to be approved soon. It's generally very well received. All the signals are there. Honestly, I'm handicapping it at 99-1.
Okay. Tom Farley, it's good to see you. We wish you lots of luck. Congratulations on the event, and we look forward to all the news that's coming out of it. Thanks.
Good to see you. Thanks, Andrew.
Bill Ackman reportedly planning to take Pershing Square public as soon as next year. The Journal saying that in the lead up to the listing, Ackman selling a stake in the investment firm to investors. That funding round expected to value Pershing Square at about $10.5 billion. This would be an unusual move, as hedge funds are rarely publicly listed. The Journal saying Ackman looking to capitalize on his performance record and, frankly, on his celebrity on social media. It'll be very interesting to see how his political take now, if he, in fact, he is going to be supporting former President Trump publicly, helps or hurts this offering and his celebrity in that regard.
It's funny. Suddenly I'm back. I'm back. Like, now I love Ackman again. I mean, we had same with Elon.
But
it's not just because of that. Not just because of that. The DEI stuff.
You asked me if I was what did you say? If I'm a man of whatever?
A principal.
Principal.
Right. Now he's got the right, because he's got the right principles now. Now he's got the right.
But before you thought he was terrible. I mean,
before I thought he was terrible because he was like a leading guy for Then he realizes how harmful things like that can be, and there were other reasons.
That's not why you didn't like him.
Well, I didn't like him when he said we're going to hell and then covered all his shorts during the pandemic.
You didn't like him for 100 reasons. Now you like him because he's supporting
Same
the guy
with Elon Musk.
This is my point. That's why there is. That's why that's not a principal position.
But it happened to you too with Elon Musk. You loved Elon Musk. First it was the flamethrower, and then
I've always said it. I've always said that I'm a big admirer of Elon Musk
until he cleaned up Twitter.
No, I
and no longer became a speaking point for the DNC.
There's a fabulous column that actually everybody should read if you have an opportunity to.
Everybody
Peggy
should read
Noonan.
Peggy
If you do
Noonan,
nothing
because that
else
is-
today, go read.
Everybody's too happy with hating each other.
Go
Peggy
read the Peggy
Noonan
Noonan
is-
column.
I don't need to
Completely.
read. I don't need
Okay, so you don't even like
demoralizing.
Peggy Noonan. That's half the problem. if you read Peggy Noonan today,
I've
she
read her in
writes
the
one
past.
of the most balanced columns about what's happened to America, as probably evidenced by what's happening at this table. And it is such a fabulous piece about how we actually have to listen to each other, and we have to find a way forward, and we have to think.
You're so good at that.
No, I think it's wonderful. I reached out to Peggy Noonan and asked her to come on because I think
It's
she's
such a
fantastic
great-
with it.
it's
But
such
she
a great
says
story.
the right and the left are doing this terribly,
Exactly.
and everybody looks down at everybody and doesn't listen to what anybody else has to say.
Bingo.
Physician, heal thyself.
All right, that does it for us today. Have a great weekend, everybody.
And that's the pod for today and the week. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern. To get the smartest takes and analysis from our TV show right into your ears, follow Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts. We'll meet you back here on Monday. Have a great weekend.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.